Joining us now on the Megacast is one of the over 1,000 artists that you will be able to meet at this year's Ann Arbor Art Fair. Painter Tyler Voorheis joins us now on the Megacast. Tyler, thanks for being with us today.
Thanks for having me, Tyler.
Appreciate having you on the show. Of course, you're going to be at this year's Ann Arbor Art Fair, July 21st through 23rd in Ann Arbor, 30 blocks of the city, over 1,000 artists, 3 different art shows. You are a painter. Let's talk about where that started for you. Where did your love of painting begin, and when did you realize this was something you were going to be doing for the rest of your life?
Well, I've always loved doing art. Ever since I was a little kid, I remember drawing a lot. I think my first memory of making a piece of art was I drew a cougar I saw in a coloring book, and I was just trying to copy it, and I thought it looked pretty good. So I was always encouraged as a kid. And then getting into college, that's when I started painting and started realizing that it could become a career path for me. And then, my wife and I, about 6 years ago, quit our jobs and focused on the art full time, and we've been doing it ever since.
So you would describe your art as elongated and whimsical. Where did that style come into play and really become one of your signatures in your paintings?
I think like most things with art, it's through trial and error, trying things and seeing what looks good to you and what grabs you. And initially it was, imitating other artists I really enjoy, like Salvador Dali and Tim Burton, a sculptor named Giacometti that I really love, and saw that elongated style really caught my eye. And so I started imitating it in my art, and through a lot of practice and a lot of just work, I found a way to take it into my own direction and make it my own signature.
So where does your process start when you are going into creating a painting? You have an idea when you go. Do you have an idea when you go in, and if so, where do you start in terms of crafting the composition, the color, the style of the painting? What's your process, Tyler?
Well, all of my paintings are about workers of the past, and so I start with research, and I really enjoy history, and so it's a labor of love for me, but I just start reading and digging up as much as I can find about these jobs and these occupations that I'm depicting, and through that, and then also through looking at old photographs, the composition will start to come together in my mind, and I just sketch things in my sketch and start to work it out how it's going to look. And then once I have a pretty good idea, a good direction to go in, I get to work on the painting itself and find my way through it that way.
So there's so much history that you can focus on, and you choose to focus on the history of workers, of laborers. Why that?
I think it's really important to think about everyday people throughout history and what they did day in, day out to contribute to the greater good. I think that we often look back and we see the, iconic heroes, and it's great to celebrate them, but I also want to just show the importance of the contributions we all make, how big or small, that by doing our work and doing what we're made to do, or doing the work that we're put in a position to do, we are also making the world a better place. And so to me, it's about showing the importance of that, but also I just find it fascinating to think about how work has changed. It connects to who we are and how our cultural identity has changed, and it's a great way to show the changes over time and the evolution of our culture and our history as a species.
We're joined by Tyler Voorheis. He's a painter that you will find at this year's Ann Arbor Art Fair. More information on the Ann Arbor Art Fair can be found at theannarborartfair.com. July 21st and 22nd, it's a Thursday and a Friday, 10 a.m. until 9 p.m. on 30 blocks of the city of Ann Arbor. Saturday, July 23rd, 10 a.m. until 8 p.m. You'll be able to enjoy 3 days of great art at the Ann Arbor Art Fair later on this month. And then you can find more of Tyler's art and more information on him and all that he creates at tylervoorheesart.com. That's tylervoorheesart.com for more information. Tyler, you have a specific character that's pretty common throughout your paintings called the lamplighter. What other mediums has he expanded into beyond just your paintings?
Yeah, the lamplighter was actually the very first job I did in this series that I've now done 200 paintings in. It was the first painting where I found a way to combine this long-limbed character with the theme of workers of the past. And so it's really been a special composition, a special story for me and for my wife. So since that first painting, I've done like 15 lamplighter paintings. We've started to do some murals as well. One that you showed earlier is down in Mexico. And we recently, during the COVID lockdown, we actually built a giant lamplighter sculpture out of old tools and old remnants of workers of the past. And we welded those together in our yard, and that was our COVID project. So yeah, it's grown into more of not only a story of a worker, but a symbol of a way of life. Lamplighters brought light into dark places, and they illuminated the spaces around them. And that's really how we try to live and what we try to do with our business and with my art.
So where did the lamplighter as a character, as a recurring character in your art and in your wife's art, where did that really settle in as a character that you both would be using, but really that character that continues to come back and be thematically strong across your pieces?
Well, it initially started by I was looking for a way to bring this long-limbed character into my work, and I saw an old picture of a lamplighter's bicycle. And some of the lamplighters would actually build these tall bikes. And I thought, oh, that's such a cool bike, but also the perfect bike for my tall fella. And that's where the idea came to, put the tall character with the history of the worker and combine to make this character. I think you ask a lot of artists where ideas come from, and it more feels like we're just given these things, and that's the way I feel about it. And so I just feel fortunate that I was given this idea, and it's fun to see where it's going to take us, because it really resonates with a lot of people we found, and that's fantastic.
CivicCenterTV.com/megacast this afternoon to see this interview on demand. If you're listening on the radio and want to see some of Tyler's art, you can also find his art on TylerVoorheesArt.com. TylerVoorheesArt.com, including the sculpture and the painting on the outside of his home that he and his wife did, featuring the lamplighter sculpture. So let's talk about that more, Tyler. You and your wife, that you worked on the lamplighter sculpture together, and now it's in your front yard, as you showed us. What was the experience like of creating that piece, especially at your home, and something that really is so indicative of yours and your wife's style of art?
It was great. I mean, I didn't know how to weld, and neither did my wife, and we just had to figure that out. So from a technical aspect, we grew a lot. I'm not going to say it was easy, and we didn't have a few heated exchanges about it, but we joked that it was about 8 months of marriage counseling as well as a time to make a sculpture together. One other surprise we had was that, we're collecting all these old tools and all these old remnants of workers, and it was fun to find them ourselves, but we also had complete strangers and people from the neighborhood stop by and drop off, a rusty old wrench they had in their barn, or some old things that their grandparents had left behind and they didn't know what to do with. And so it was really great just to connect with people through the sculpture. And, they'd come back and see, oh yeah, we used that piece on the arm of the lamplighter. And so the community piece was a really wonderful surprise for us. And I also think it connects to, what that sculpture and what the art in general does. It connects us to other people and just really, illuminates the world around us. And that's the intent.
We're joined by painter Tyler Voorheis on the Oakland County Megacast. He's one of over 1,000 artists you will find at this year's Ann Arbor Art Fair, July 21st through 23rd on 30 blocks of Ann Arbor. More information on the entire art show, including all 3 of its art shows within the art show, entertainment, and more activities in Ann Arbor, July 21st through 23rd on theannarborartfair.com. Theannarborartfair.com. And to view Tyler's art, TylerVoorheesArt.com. TylerVoorheesArt.com is the website to view many of his pieces. As you create these pieces, as you highlight some of the workers past and present, and maybe even into the future, what sort of research goes into that so that you are collecting those key points, those focal points, and really creating a piece of art that shows the labor that goes into these different professions, but also the history of those professions?
Well, as far as gathering ideas, I love reading about history, and so often I'll come across things in the books I'm reading that I hadn't thought of. But that's about half of it. The other half is just interacting with people at art festivals like the Ann Arbor Art Festival. And, a lot of historians out there, a lot of people who have, jobs in their families that I hadn't thought of, and they'll come and tell me how their grandfather was a postmaster in a little town in Kansas or something. And it just gets me thinking. So in my studio here, I keep a running list of ideas that I haven't painted or some that I want to come back to later. And then I come to the studio on the days I paint and look at the list and see what grabs my attention, and then start that process I mentioned earlier of research and then the creation of the art.
We're joined by Tyler Voorheis. He joins us now on the Oakland County Megacast, a painter you'll find at this year's Ann Arbor Art Fair, July 21st through 23rd on 30 blocks of the city of Ann Arbor. So you mentioned you enjoy these art fairs. You love going to places like Ann Arbor and talking with art enthusiasts and talking with people that have unique backgrounds. What about that interaction gets incorporated into your art ultimately? As you talk to these people, as they interact with you, as they interact with your art, what do you as an artist take out of those relationships?
It's interesting with COVID and all the festivals being canceled that one year. I think a lot of us artists got to realize how important that experience is to our work. And for me personally, it's very motivating for me when I am in the studio. It gets me excited when I have some piece of art that I'm excited about. I also really bring a lot of enthusiasm to that moment where I get to share it with people who know my work, and a lot of who've never seen my work before. That surprise and that delight that you get to watch go across people's faces as they walk into your booth and open their eyes to the possibilities of what us artists can do. So for me, it's really, just as important as the creation is the chance to share with people and to meet with new collectors and collectors that have known me for a while. It really feeds my work. It's an energy that I bring into the studio after the festivals.
We're joined by Tyler Voorheis, who you will see at this year's Ann Arbor Art Fair. You can find more information on his art and see some of his pieces that you may also see at this year's Ann Arbor Art Fair on TylerVoorheisArt.com, TylerVoorheisArt.com. And Tyler, you're originally from South Dakota, but now you live in the state of Michigan. Having lived in the state of Michigan, presented your art in the state of Michigan, can you speak to the unique love that Michiganders have for art and that love that's been manifested in what you've seen at shows like Ann Arbor and throughout the state since you've lived here?
Michigan is such a unique combination in my mind and in our experience. We loved growing up in South Dakota and the rural communities that my wife and I both came from. We see the value of that small town life and that closely knit community. And so we found that in Michigan, but what we have also found is that the art scene here is thriving, and somehow there's this wonderful combination of rural life and small town feel with this really exciting and dynamic arts energy and community. So we just easily connect with Michiganders, and they're just our people. And so they've welcomed us, and we just feel at home here. And we've been here for 5 years now, so we're just honored to live in Michigan.
Well, Tyler, we're glad to have you here and glad to have your art also here in Michigan at the Ann Arbor Art Fair, July 21st through 23rd. More information on Tyler and all the artists at this year's Ann Arbor Art Fair can be found on theannarborartfair.com. Again, those days, July 21st through 23rd. It's a Thursday through a Saturday. Thursday and Friday, 21st and 22nd of July, 10 a.m. until 9 p.m. Saturday, 10 a.m. until 8 p.m. So plenty of time, plenty of different days for you to get out there, see Tyler and see all the other artists at this year's Ann Arbor Art Fair. Tyler, another couple minutes with you before we'll say goodbye today. Anything else that we haven't discussed about your art, about your process, about what you'll be bringing to this year's Ann Arbor Art Fair that you'd like to say to our audience today?
Well, one unique thing about my process that isn't apparent when you just look at images online or on the screen is the figures in my paintings. I always make them out of paper. And so in person, they really have a nice dimension and a subtle texture that you can't really appreciate on the screen. So that's one thing that I'm excited to share with people if they do make it down. So yeah, I actually draw the figures on paper, and I cut them out using an X-Acto knife, and then I cover them with these torn bits of paper to give them texture and change the tone a bit. I trim that and paint it, and then I affix that to the panel. I've got one to show just to give you an example.
Absolutely.
Yeah, like this is an elevator operator, and so you can kind of see as I turn it that little bit of texture that she has.
Yeah.
And so yeah, her whole entire body is made out of paper, and so it has a nice dimension. I think that people are often surprised by that if they've only seen the work online, is that the original paintings really do have a lot of texture and volume to them.
As Tyler said, you can't really see it the way that it's intended to be seen or it gets full effect by just seeing it on the screen like you are today if you're watching this live or if you're viewing it on demand, civiccentertv.com/megacast. So highly encourage you to get out to this year's Ann Arbor Art Fair, July 21st through 23rd, 10 a.m. to 9 p.m. on Thursday and Friday. Saturday, July 23rd, it is 10 a.m. until 8 p.m. You'll see Tyler Voorheis and other artists there in Ann Arbor. Tyler, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.